Hello everyone, my name is Phawx, and this is a video that I've been waiting to make for a long time now. This is something that internally on the unofficial GPD Discord that we've been discussing amongst ourselves, and Jodes has probably been talking about it the most just because he's been trying to lead the charge on this thing for the longest time. He made this image a while ago where he was kind of just advertising like, "Dear GPD, please make this the successor to the GPD Win 2. And we all saw it and we all wanted it, but it kind of pivoted with the GPD Win 3, and then the GPD Win 4 was an extension, a successor to the GPD Win 3. And now what we were always hoping for was an actual successor to the GPD Win 2. And more to the point, this is kind of a return to form for myself where I am making a video that is what we know so far on the successor of the GPD Win 2, the GPD Win Mini. This is indeed the return of the king, and I'm super stoked to be able to talk to you about it right now, so I'll be able to reveal a few more details for you. So up first, let's talk about the battery size. All right, so I'm going to show you guys the Steam Deck right here because a lot of people have this and people are familiar with it. So the battery size on the GPD Win 2, many people might not know, is that the battery is 37 watt hour on the GPD Win 2. On the Steam Deck, it's 40 watt hour. So the Steam Deck has a slightly larger battery in capacity than the GPD Win 2. However, the size difference, as I look up in this viewfinder, it's gigantic. It's a huge difference, right? So I could easily pocket a GPD Win 2, whereas that would be impossible with the Steam Deck. So now where would the battery capacity be on something like the GPD Win Mini? Obviously it needs to be bigger because the dimensions on the device are a little bit bigger. People have already seen stuff about it and like they're really not sure. They just know that it looks slightly larger. It is slightly larger, but alarmingly, it's not that much larger. And I can't wait to tell you the dimensions because it's almost like black magic with how it is. So the battery capacity on the GPD Win Mini is 45 watt hour. This is tentative of what we know right now, so this could change to some degree, but right now it is being told to us that it's 45 watt hour. So around a 12% increase in capacity over the Steam Deck. So we have more battery capacity on the GPD Win Mini than the Steam Deck. Also, if we were to talk about the display on the GPD Win 2 is a 6-inch 720p display. Well, it's a portrait-based panel, but you get the idea anyway. On the GPD Win Mini, it is, I believe, to be 6.9 inches, because when I put all the figures in, when I put in the dimensions of what this is and the dimensions of what I know the GPD Win Mini is, it turns out that the screen size on the GPD Win Mini is like 6.9 inches, but let's just say it's 7 inches. That is a 7-inch 1080p display. 16:9 aspect ratio. So if the screen is that much larger, certainly the GPD Win Mini must be considerably larger, because if we have to grow almost an inch diagonally, that seems like it's going to be a bunch. But we actually have a bunch of border on the GPD Win 2. And when we get down to the dimensions of what the GPD Win Mini is, it's really not that much. So up first, let's talk about the dimensions on the GPD Win 2. So here is the GPD Win 2. The dimensions are 162 millimeters wide, 99 millimeters tall. Now that is with the case closed, right? So the display closed, it's 99 millimeters tall, and then 25 millimeters thick. So that's what the dimensions of the GPD Win 2 is. And I'm showing you this image even though the screen is up, just so you can get a good idea of where this kind of fits with regard to the GPD Win Mini. If we slowly fade in the GPD Win Mini, we can see that it doesn't grow all that much larger. And the reality is that the GPD Win Mini is only 5 millimeters wider than the GPD Win 2. So half a centimeter wider than the GPD Win 2. And when it's taller, it is 9 millimeters taller, again, with the case closed. So it's about almost a centimeter taller and half a centimeter wider. Not really all that much different. So when you close up the device, it's still going to be rather pocketable. Now, the only thing that I want to mention here is that the GPD Win 2 has kind of inlaid triggers, whereas the GPD Win Mini is going to have more full-featured analog triggers. So those will extend a few extra millimeters. So the base of the device is still 25 millimeters thick. However, the analog triggers on the GPD Win Mini should come out a little bit more. Not that that should really matter all that much in terms of pocketability, but at that point it would be a bit wide, a bit thicker. So it's at its thickest point, we would have to make it seem thicker than it actually is. But in all reality, it wouldn't be that much thicker, especially in terms of pocketability. So now we know basically the dimensions of this device. Now, if we were to kind of align this, the GPD Win Mini, against the Steam Deck. Now, the Steam Deck has a 7-inch display. However, that is diagonal on a 16 by 10 display instead of 16 by 9. The GPD Win Mini is a 16 by 9 display. Now, the things that we have to mention here is that a lot of games want to run at 16 by 9. There are a number of games that will run at 16 by 10, or you can force into 16 by 10, but there are a lot of them that want to run at 16 by 9. So for all intents and purposes, generally speaking, the GPD Win Mini will always have be able to use the full real estate of the screen at all times without having to muck around and do anything, because it's a more standard aspect ratio. So if we kind of fade in the Steam Deck over the GPD Win Mini, we can kind of see right where these screens kind of align and how different they are in terms of which one's bigger or smaller. Obviously, because a 16 by 10 display is going to be just slightly less wide, but it's still going to be taller. So this is where the aspect ratios kind of play in. The bottom line is that for most games, you're basically going to have the same real estate area between these two devices. It's just that the GPD Win Mini is going to be completely pocketable versus the Steam Deck, which isn't. So if you wanted something that was like a Steam Deck, but being able to have it be very small and relatively pocketable, even if it doesn't fit in your front pocket, it will for sure fit in your back pocket with ease. This is going to be the device for you. It'll be the only device that will be a actually pocketable device, not something like the GPD Win 4, which has its exposed analog sticks, or any other device that is still small but still has exposed analog sticks. You can't really put them in your pocket because it's just uncomfortable and it's just protruding and it's not great. A clamshell device is a far better suited device to be make it pocketable. So now let's go ahead and start looking through these renders that I've been kind of filtering through this video. Up first, we're going to take a look at the front face shot of it, and we can see the more fully exposed keyboard. Now, there are some things here that I do agree with some of the comments that have been made about the keyboard so far. Some of the alignment doesn't seem, alignment's fine, but some of the button placement, especially that right row, right column, that doesn't seem all that great. I would like this to be fixed up to some degree. I don't know how much say we're going to have in this particular regard. This is what it is right now. The H1 and H2 buttons, what that actually is much like, I got my Oculink thing hooked up to this right at the moment. So this is my Oculink for eGPU on my GPD Max-2, but you can see these buttons on the bottom of the GPD Max-2. Those are programmable by a user using the GPD's own interface, and that will program the firmware of the game controller on the device itself. So once you flash it, you don't need to run that program again. You can just change those to be whatever you want. And those are what those H1 and H2 buttons are, is they will be functioning as those back buttons. They're just additional buttons that you can program to be whatever you like. Next up, if we take a look at this particular view, you're going to notice that it has handles on the bottom of it. So the thing that I want to make note of here is that these are one of two bottom mounting brackets of the GPD Win Mini itself. If we take a look at the horizontal placement of it, you can see that in this particular image, there is no grip handles at all. There is no grip attachment on this particular one. So this is more of like a standard look, something that is basically how the GPD Win 2 is right now, is you're looking at this particular arrangement. If we take a look at the back of the grip thing, this has not been revealed to anyone just yet, so this is something that's just on this. I would show more renders, but a lot of the renders that I have are really old and don't even show the touchpad, and I don't want to confuse anybody, so I'm just going to show what has been given to me so far. So this is what the grip bottom plate looks like, and this is something that you would actually replace the bottom shell of your GPD Win Mini. So this isn't like a grip that just like sticks on and you take off. It's not an add-on. It would be taking off the entire back plate and putting this back plate with the grips on and screwing it in, and it would be something that was affixed to it. So this is for people that want a device but has grips. If you put on these grips, the only thing that you should be mindful of is that it will be no longer pocketable. So it'd be something that you would put in a bag, and that would just be something that you dealt with. For me, I don't really ever care about grips. I've never been a fan of the add-on grips. I much prefer this thing as being affixed and being a part of the device. I think that's a much better option, but I probably still won't ever use it, and I'll always just go for the slimmest form factor because this is more utilitarian for me, and that's kind of my philosophy on a lot of things, and that's the way I go. So that's pretty much everything we know so far about the GPD Win Mini right now. And the only other thing that I need to talk about is the crossmark thing that was leaked. The first person that I know that leaked it was Orlac on Twitter, and other people tagged me with it and commented on it. And I saw it before then, and I told the mod staff, and I was just like, this is going to come out, guys. There's no way that people aren't going to be talking about this. So yes, GPD does have 7840U working in some capacity. This is technically true. I mean, GPD had the 6800U working last year around this time as well, that only a few people like myself and a few other people actually knew about. This is not unusual. Like Lenovo, Asus, all these companies are working on these chips before they sell them. So there is some degree of them in a alpha state where they're being worked on. This is known. So yeah, GPD does have 7840U, and they have it running, and I've seen other things. I just want everyone to kind of pump their brakes in a few different directions here. I want everyone because the reason we don't like talking about it is multiple reasons. Number one, even though I know about this information, GPD doesn't want this information getting out because they don't want people to have buyer's remorse, because even though the GPD people that have the GPD Win Max 2 have had them for a while now, and they wouldn't be that upset because they just had it and they understand it. But people on the international side are just starting to get their GPD Win 4 in. So if they're just starting to get a GPD Win 4 in with 6800U, and they see that GPD has 7840U, they're going to be like, oh man, I got this, and now they already have the next thing. The reality is that this device is not going to be ready for you for months yet, which comes to the last part of what we know so far, is that tentatively we're looking at a July IGG start date. So July of some time. So in July, you can start to do the pledge on the crowdfunding for the GPD Win Mini, which means that you're looking at basically an October-ish delivery date of 2023. Generally speaking, October, November. So you're already closing in on Q4 before anyone even get their hands on a GPD Win Mini with a potential chip. It doesn't mean that it will have the 7840U is the other part of this. So I just want to kind of mention this, is that even though the crossmark thing that you see there mentions a 1080p display, which is either going to be the Win 4 or the GPD Win Mini, which has a 1080p display, just take that with a grain of salt right now, because even though GPD is working on it, it does not mean that the GPD Win Mini is going to have the 7840U at the current moment. Potentially, perhaps, there's also the newer chip that was kind of just talked about just recently, the 7540U, which has 2 P CPU cores and 4 E CPU cores. So AMD has this big little architecture that Alder Lake has had on Intel side. So you have P cores and E cores. The one difference being that they look like they're all Zen 4, but a difference on Zen 4, but they all have SMT, simultaneous multi-threading. So it's not like Intel in that respect, where the E cores were only single-threaded and didn't have hyper-threading. All of these cores still have hyper-threading or SMT on the 7540U. So it's 6 cores, 12 threads. And it also only has 4 CU on the RDNA side, RDNA 3. So depending on frequency and stuff, this kind of looks like a next generation Mendocino from like my vantage point. So this is an interesting chip, especially if we're thinking about it for like a GPD Win Mini. It should be cheaper to get, so it should reduce the cost to some degree, and still be relatively very performant. So it's still an interesting chip from my eyes, especially for a variant of the GPD Win Mini. This is all to say that this is not set in stone. Don't read too much into it. Yes, GPD has it. They're working on it. This has been known for some time now, but now everyone knows it. And this isn't on not to be expected. All companies do this, right? That aside, even if you have a GPD Win Max 2 or you have a GPD Win 4, you should know that the resale value of these devices is always very good. So even if you're only going to have it for 8 or 9 months and you decide to sell it to get the next thing that's coming out and just try to keep up with the cycle, know it that you're going to still get good value out of your device. It's not like it's going to drop in value a bunch. GPD devices really don't sell a ton. There's maybe 5,000 to 10,000 units that sell, which means that supply is always low, which means that if you want to resell it, price always stays high. And this has been true across the board forever. The GPD Win 1 sells for a lot still, which isn't worth it. The GPD Win 2 still sells for a lot, which comparatively isn't worth it, but it's still the only device in its size class that is pocketable. So I can understand why some people would still want this device, even though the performance of it doesn't match anywhere near what these newer devices are. GPD Win 3 devices still sell really well. Basically, what I'm saying is, if you almost look at it like as a weird rental, you're basically going to be paying maybe like $100 or $200 for using it for 9 months. So if you look at that in the aggregate, it's not that much per month. Maybe you're only spending $20 per month to have the device. It's a weird way to look at it, but it kind of make you feel better and not have instant buyer's remorse knowing that nugget of information. That's pretty much it for me on what we know so far on the GPD Win Mini. Hopefully this has been entertaining and informative. As always, guys, thank you for your time and thanks for watching.